Hi, my name is Kerry Critchlow from RCR Recording Studios, and today we are going to go over how to write/produce a song. We're not going to get so much into the lyrical side of things today, although that may be potentially something we'll cover in the future. I'm not sure. Today we're going to stick mostly to the production side of it, but there's a lot of great videos on how to come up with lyrical content, but today that's not going to be the focus of what we're going over today. So you may ask yourself, what are the first steps? Like, how would you go about writing a song? Well, the process that works best for me, and this may or may not work for you, but it's perhaps a place for you to start. But what works best for me is step number one would be find your inspiration. And of course, I cannot type. I apologize. But you want to find your inspiration. Now, this can come in a few different ways. For instance, it may be a chord progression. It might be lyrics. It could be a cool sound that you've heard. It could be a drum beat. My God, I just suck at typing. It could be a drum beat. It could be a loop of some sort. It could be a movie or book. Be a movie, a book, or a poem, or some kind of media that inspires you. A story, whatever. Whatever it is. I mean, it could be a melody that you're kind of hearing in your head. It can be that you can find inspiration in just about anything if you're really looking. But the idea is that you find something that inspires you, that gives you that sparks that gets the creative juices flowing, that sparks the creativity within you. Anything that can kind of generate an idea for you. It could be other music even. Like maybe you heard a song on the radio and you like it and you thought, oh, I really like this aspect. I can borrow from this kind of thing. You need to be a little careful about that because of copyright law, but there are ways to do it that won't get you in trouble, and there are ways to do it that will get you in trouble. So you may want to look into that a little bit before you borrow too heavily from an existing song. But there are aspects and elements that you can borrow from songs that will allow you to find that inspiration. So you need to find your inspiration, and like I said, you can look anywhere. This is not a comprehensive list. There are other things out there that probably won't even occur to me, but these are places I've found some inspiration myself for writing a song, and hopefully you can find that inspiration yourself if you keep looking hard enough. So the second step, once you found your inspiration, would be to lay down the foundation of your song. And generally speaking, that's going to come from the inspiration. So if it was a drum beat that inspired you, start by laying down that drum beat. If it was a melody, start by laying down the melody. If it was a sound, start by using the sound in a creative way. But you start laying down the foundation. Now, that foundation can always be changed later. There's nothing necessarily has to stick. You don't have to end the song the same way you started it. But you need to start laying down the foundation and get the basic outline going of the song. And that might be like a template for like your verses, your choruses, bridges, etc. Do you want to start on the chorus? Do you want to start on the verse? What kind of song structure do you want? Is a very standard song format out there, especially in pop music, tends to be a verse, chorus, second verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, and then maybe a double chorus at the end, something like that. That would be a typical song structure. Excuse me. There are other ways you can do it. You can start on the chorus and do a verse. You can have, an ABC, which would be like a verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus, bridge kind of thing. There's no real right or wrong way, but figuring out sort of the outline or template for your song would be the next step. So you're going to lay down the foundation, set up your template for your progression, and then you would start filling in the details of your song. And that's going to be stuff like fleshing out the instrumentation, adding elements, figuring out ways to distinguish your verses and choruses, figuring out ways to add interest and differences between the verses and choruses, or even between the verses themselves. Meaning you may want to have the first verse be a little bit different than the second verse, and that's just to keep the song from being overly stale or just adding interest, essentially. It's very important in modern music that you keep your listener engaged, because attention spans, for good, better or worse, are harder and harder to keep, generationally speaking. And so anything you can think of to flesh out the song, fill in the details, and keep the song interesting for the listener. After a while of doing that, you're going to come across what I call the PD. A smarter person than I came up with this, but there's something that engineers use, which is a plan, do, check, and then adjust. And you can just call that PDCA for short. But once you've started kind of going through and filling in some of the details, and you got your template and all this other stuff going, you're kind of creating a plan here. Then you're doing the plan, and then once you hit the check stage, you're going back and you're thinking, is this song sounding the way I want it to sound? Are things coming together in a way that I find pleasing, that it makes sense to me, that works for me, that I like, that sounds good to me? And then if not, you make adjustments, and if you're good, then you're good. But it's kind of a circular process in a lot of ways. So oftentimes the way I start a song is not the way I end the song. For instance, I may start the song with one chord progression or one sound or one thing, and then I start working on the song, and then all of a sudden, after a while, it gets to the point where what I'm actually working on is not really doing it for me, and so I go back and I change things until I tweak it until I can get it to sound a little better. And that can be anything from changing up the chord progression, changing up the sounds, changing up the beat, changing up the melody. I mean, anything that I think is necessary in order to make the song better, in my own personal subjective opinion. And so that's what the plan, do, check, adjust is. It's you go in with maybe a rough idea of how you want to approach the song. You start working on it, which is the do stage. And then as you're doing it, you're kind of constantly getting constant feedback as you listen through the song, and you can check that and make adjustments as necessary to make sure that it's kind of doing what it is you want to do. And then once you've done all that, basically your song is done. That's it. Right? It's very simple, little 5-6 step process, but in practice it can be very frustrating. There's things called writer's block out there. It happens to authors of books. It happens to anyone in the creative space. You're always going to come across this writer's block, which is kind of where you're stuck, or you can't seem to find that inspiration. You can't seem to find that idea that, or you run into maybe you found your inspiration, but you can't figure out how to execute it. But the writer's block is that thing that kind of just stops you in your tracks and prevents you from being able to write. And so there are ways around that, but this is, in a nutshell, how you would write a song. You're going to find your inspiration. You're going to lay down the foundation, figure out your template, or your structure of your song, if you will, and then you fill in the details. And the details is everything from the instrumentation to recording the vocals, all that kind of stuff. You're just this would be like kind of an outline, and then this would be the detailing stage where you're really going through and making the fine details. And as you're doing all of that, you're going through this PDCA process. And then once you've done this PDCA process enough times to where you're happy, then you're done with your song. So this is, in a nutshell, how to write a song. Now, it's very simple, but believe me, I realize it's not easy, or at least it's not easy for most people. Truth be told, I've never found it really hard to write songs. I will caveat that by saying that it is much trickier to write a good song. For instance, for every song that I write, I'm happy with maybe 1 out of 10, give or take. The vast majority of songs that I write never end up seeing the light of day because I think that they're just absolutely atrocious, and I never want to hear them again. And that's fine. For some people, that number might be closer to like 1 out of 5. For other people, it might be 1 out of 50. It's going to be a little bit different probably from person to person. But what I found out over the years is that in order for me to get one good song, I have to write 10 bad ones, essentially. And so that I know if I can write 100 songs, no matter how good or bad they are, out of 100 songs, chances are somewhere around 10, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but somewhere around 10 songs out of that 100 are going to be good, at least to my own ears. That being said, I've played some of the music I really don't like that I've created for other people, and they have really enjoyed it. So, sometimes we're our own worst critics. But the idea then is that when it comes to writing music, it really becomes a numbers game, meaning you don't have to wait until you've figured out every nuance of the song. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to write the best song ever every time you write a song. You just need to write. And if you write songs enough, eventually you're going to get to the point where you're going to have a few songs that you're really going to like and enjoy yourself. So I thought what we could do is kind of go through this process a little bit. Excuse me, a little thirsty. So we'll go through this process, and I thought this would be also a good opportunity to kind of go over the concept of, well, no, we'll save that for another day. But anyways, so we're going to find our inspiration. Now, oftentimes my inspiration comes from drums. It's where I like to kind of start a lot of projects, but every now and then I will change it up just because, it's good to get to mix it up. I don't know, to change it up, to do things a little bit differently. It can kind of, in some ways, create I don't know what a good way to say this is. Doing things in a different way can lead to some you thinking outside your own box, I guess, is the best way I can put it. And it can force you to think in different ways, which can lead to different senses of creativity. I don't know. That's probably the best way I can say it. But for today, I'm just going to kind of show you what my typical process is, and then we can you don't have to do it this way. You can find your own way. As long as you're kind of roughly following this sort of process generally, you're going to be in good shape. But for me, oftentimes, the drums tend to be a good place to start. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but drums typically are the kind of the foundational quality of any song. The distinguishing component of a song. For instance, you can tell if it's a rock song or a hip hop song or an EDM song or a jazz song or a folk song or whatever, oftentimes just by listening to what the drums are doing or the percussion, whatever the case may be. But I find that for me personally, drums are a great place to start. Now, you may be writing a song that doesn't use drums, in which case, don't start with the drums. Start with something else. Maybe start with a piano or a guitar or something else, or whatever your inspiration is, start with that. But for me, like I said, and I'm probably rambling here at this point, but drums tend to be where I tend to find most of my inspiration, for better or worse. So I'm going to come through here and just start going through some drum sounds and see if any of these kind of spark some interest in me. And that's not bad, but probably not what I'm looking for. So I'm just going to find another random drum kit here. All right, well, this is kind of interesting. And sometimes it doesn't really matter what you start with, because you can always change these sounds later if you so desire. So finding the perfect kit is not always necessary, but there's nothing wrong with it either. This might be fun. Do something a little bit more on the, I don't know, trippy side, maybe, or psychedelic side. So let's start with this, and we'll just see where it goes. And if, I get to a point where it's not I'm not feeling it anymore, then we can change it up. But I'm going to start with this, and we'll go from there. So we'll open up our piano view, and then all right, so probably going to start with an eighth note pattern, and we're at 90 BPM. It's kind of arbitrary. So we have an eighth note hi-hat pattern. Cool beans. And then we'll start adding in our kick and our snare. Now, like I said, I think we went over this in a previous video, but 2 and 4 is a great place to start with your snare, and then you can always adjust that later if you so desire. All right, so something like that might be cool. And then we'll just repeat that for now. And I'm just, a lot of this is very arbitrary or very random right now. I'm just kind of like vibing. I may or may not keep this, like I said, but I'm just trying to, have some fun with it. And this is kind of what I'm feeling right now. That could change. Like, that probably doesn't need to be there. And then maybe what I want to do is have a few of these be, especially ones that are not happening Although there's probably not some of these have them on a shakery kind of sound. All right. And we might come back to some of those other fun little sounds later. All right. So hopefully I'm not going too fast for you. I've basically taken this 8th note hi-hat pattern there, and then on various beats, I'm putting some of these on a little different sound, adding in a few little sound effecty things. Kicks, I've got on the 1, the and of 2, and the 1E of 3. So a quarter note on 1, and then essentially this is a half note rest, and then a excuse me, and then another quarter note here. Not half note, I'm sorry, quarter note rest. So this is an 8, like you can kind of see on the grids here, but we got it. The first kick on beat 1 of the bar. The second kick is on the and of beat 2. So 1 and 2 and then we have 3, and this is a 16th note here. So it's 1 E and, so this is on the E of beat 3, and then that's it. For the snare, we have snare on 2 and 4. And then I'm adding this other kick. So 2 different sounding kicks. So our basic kick is here. Our second kick is here at the 1 E and the of beat 1, 16th note again, and then it's on the of beat 3 as well. So that's kind of what's happening there. Snares are in 2 and 4, and then I'm adding another clap or whatever on beat 3 of each of these bars, which is essentially functioning the same. It's functioning as a snare, but it's a different sound just to create variety as it goes. Now, this, if nothing changes, will eventually get stale. You know, it's kind of interesting for the 2 or 3 or 4 bars or whatever that it's going right now, but eventually it will start to get stale. So we're going to want to figure out other ways to add interest to this drum kit, and we can do that in a few different ways. One way we can do that is to simplify it by taking away elements and then adding them back in, and we can kind of go through that as we go. But what I tend to typically like to do is get a really good kind of groove going first, kind of fill out what's going on, and then I can start subtracting things from it later in order to add interest, or I can start adding things to it as well to add interest. And I might actually do some of that with like these shaker sounds, maybe have some of them do something like that. I'm kind of digging that, and I'm just putting them on, you know, different beats, offsetting them a little bit, adding a little bit of I don't know, just some flavor to the track. And you can get as crazy with this as you want, or you can go super simple. There's nothing really wrong or right. I'm just trying to create, find some different ways to add interest. And then maybe do that again here. Yeah, so you can add in these little sound effect things and just creating some vibe, just getting these drums to sound a little bit more interesting, right? Like I said, we can start taking some of this stuff out or even adding more in as the song goes, but this is a good start, I think. And so we can use this as kind of like our foundation. Now, I may change some of this up later, but that and there's nothing wrong with that, but you can kind of see what's going on. We're just creating kind of a fun little rhythmic thing with these drums, giving the song some vibe, giving it some interest. For some of you, you might hate what I've just done here. You might think this is the dumbest thing you've ever heard, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with I'm by no means trying to claim that this is the way to do it every time. I'm just kind of experimenting and having some fun with it and just seeing what happens. Some of you might think this is brilliant. And I'm very humbled if you do. I'm not really doing too much in my own opinion. I'm just kind of having some fun and just seeing what happens. I'm just, throwing mud at a wall, so to speak, and just seeing what sticks, see what I like. Like I said, we may go back through and change some of this later, tweak it. But this is a good starting point, I think. All right, so now that we've got kind of a foundation here going, we can start adding in some other instrumentation. So then, at this point, you may want to start adding in some chords, or you may want to start adding in some bass or whatever. I think I'm going to start with a bass and see what happens. And so I don't want to spend too much time going through sounds, although there's definitely something to be said about going through sounds and finding the perfect thing. But right now I'm just trying to kind of find a general vibe. And like I said, we can always change things up later. I can always just switch up the sound. So right now I'm mostly just looking to find something that has some interest. I don't know. I'm something that maybe feels appropriate with what the drums are doing sound-wise. And this is very subjective. There's no right or wrong. Kind of use your best judgment. You might agree or disagree with my choices, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing with my choices. But that's the beauty of music. We can all kind of just figure out our own preferences and go with those. So I'm just kind of figuring it out as I go. I have no game plan here. This is all just making it up on the spot. Okay, so, well, I didn't like those notes. I think the sound itself is probably okay-ish. I may end up changing it. Okay. Like I said, maybe change it up. I may come back to this, but let's just try out some other sounds and just see what this sounds like at that same progression. All right. I think I can work with something like that. I think that's kind of vibing a little bit. You might hate that choice. You might love it. I don't know. But when you're writing your own song, you can make your own decisions about this kind of stuff. My goal right now is not necessarily to make a complete masterpiece. I'm just trying to get a vibe, get the creative juices flowing. Just I may change all of this up later. I don't know. Okay, so that's kind of cool. What I'm thinking right now that it needs is just kind of like a little bit of movement. So maybe like an eighth note arpeggio of some sort might be cool. With some plucks, perhaps. A little more chill. Maybe something like this would be cool. So that sounds. That's. All right, so it's not horrible, not the best, at least not in my opinion, but it's something. It's a place to start. I feel like this should be up there, maybe. Okay, so I feel like I'm digging that a little bit more. So we'll copy paste it. Oop. Didn't quite get that on the right note. Okay. All right, so it's coming along. We'll call this our arpeggio, or ARP for short. And then now maybe some like chordy bits would be fun. And I think that in future video at some point we'll go over some sound design, because that's another aspect of how you can do this. So like I'm using a lot of presets right now, just kind of finding something that kind of works. But there's a way to actually manipulate these sounds, or even build your own sounds using synthesizers, which is this is a synthesizer called Anitude from Steven Slate. Yeah. And I think maybe more of a paddy thing. That's not what we wanted to do. We want to do this. Okay. Uh, oop. Yeah, we'll see how that sounds. Okay, so that's fine for now. This is not exactly a work of art by any means, but I'm just trying to give you some thoughts. They can't all be winners, we'll say, but hopefully you're getting the concept of how you would go about creating a song. And then this time we'll actually do something a little bit more chordy, leady, like that kind of sounded. Well, something like that might be cool. View. Also, I tend to play this stuff out usually when I'm doing this for real. Right now I'm just drawing it in, and it's a good skill to know how to do, to be able to draw these things in. But generally speaking, I use a MIDI controller and then play it on a keyboard to do this, and then like do quantization and things like that at a later time. So there's nothing wrong with doing it this way, but it's not my typical way of doing things, we'll say. So. Okay. And for those of you who want to get a bit more into the theory of what's going on here, what I'm doing is A minor, an F major, and then a D minor as my chord progression. So A minor is the first bar, F major is the second bar, and then D minor is the third and the fourth bar. And so this is an A and an E, which is the fifth. So it's the first and the fifth in the A minor chord. We're just missing that C. Then for the F, we're putting in the C, which is the third, and the A, which is the fifth. So we're actually, there is no, I have no, taking the first, the one of the 1, 3, 5, I'm taking the bottom out, the F note of the chord. And then right here, for the first D minor chord, I'm doing an A and a D, which is a fifth. And then I'm doing an A and an F, which is the third and the fifth. So hopefully that makes sense. If you've been following this video series up to this point, you should at least have some kind of inkling about what that is. If this is in the key of C, technically I think this is in the key of A minor, but it uses all the same notes as the key of C, so you can think of them kind of similarly. They'd be slightly different scales, but if this was in the key, since we haven't touched on minor keys, we're just going to use the key of C to make it a little bit simpler. But this is a 6, 4, 2 chord progression in the key of C major. In A minor, it'd be a little bit different. But since we haven't gone over the minor scales and all that, we're not going to get into that part of it right now. So hopefully this is making sense. But the scale degrees, if we were to come over here, this is A major, not C, but the 6, the 4, and the 2, just as some reference, is the chord progression that this would be in a major key. Again, it'd be a little different in a minor key, but we'll get to that in a future video at some point. And actually, I think I want to have this drop. Maybe. And have this F drop as well. All right, and that's just giving a little bit of movement. All right, and so we've got kind of a very basic song going here, right? And so our song's starting to fill out a little bit. Now, I don't know how much further we're going to go into this. I just wanted to give you a basic concept, but what I think we'll do is, just for an example, is maybe over here, we'll do a different chord progression. So you can kind of like, so we'll maybe think of this section here as a verse, and then this section here as a chorus, and just give a super basic concept of how you might go about making things different. So we'd probably want to mute some of this for now. And so if we were doing this, maybe now we'll do some doubling kind of stuff. Maybe give that just a little bit of that. And we'll change up the chord progression. Maybe we'll go to like a G here. Okay, so something like that. And again, I'm being very arbitrary right now. I'm not really thinking this through super heavily. Just kind of winging it. And so if we were to kind of just go through and listen to what we got, and I probably end up actually maybe changing a few things up in here. All right, so we're just kind of simplifying this a little bit. We get rid of these claps here. Okay. Just subtle, and we can do some other things here in the chorus to give it more more interest and whatnot. But I'm just trying to give you some basic concepts here when it comes to differentiating things. So we're simplifying the verse a little bit. You can go into more extreme examples of that. Like maybe you don't even have this hi-hat going for this section here. Maybe it's just this. And that's probably actually works out all right. So let's go ahead and just do that for the first few bars. And we'll copy paste that over. All right. And so we've simplified this first section quite a bit. you kind of start to get the idea a little bit, right? And then we can start playing with some of these other instruments as well. So if we come here, this arpeggio would have to start, obviously can't be the same. So maybe we drop this A down to a G, this E to a D. So now it's a G instead. All right, and we'll just copy paste that. Look at this. Again, we'll probably need to change because different notes. So sometimes you need to change a lot. Sometimes you just need to change a couple of notes, depending on, you know, what you're doing. And I'm wondering, actually, now that we're really kind of getting into this a little bit, I'm thinking that what we do is, instead of having that clap on 3 there, which is giving it a, kind of a bit of a whatever, we'll put it on the 2 and 4 and layer it, and it'll just seem like the drums got a little bit more oomphy. All right, and then our last little bit here. Again, we're going to change the chord, so from an A to a G. And then I think we went to a D. And then a C. Oop. And then this can be a D to a B. And then again, we'll just copy paste it. You can get more complex than this. I'm trying to keep it relatively simple on purpose here. But now we have two kind of distinct parts. We have an A section and a B section. So our A section would be from measures 1 through 9, and our B section would be from measures 9 to 17. And you can think of them as like a verse chorus if you want, or you can think of it as an A-B section. There's no real wrong or right there. But we have two kind of distinct sections that sort of work with within the context of each other. So I'll play that for you. All right. So hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully this has given you some ideas, but this is what it comes down to. And you can write some lyrics on top of this, or maybe lyrics is what you started with, and this is kind of you thing. You can kind of come up with a melody for it and lay your lyrics over it. Or if you don't want to have any lyrics, you want to make this an instrumental, then you just add in your melody using a different instrument, and you kind of have your song. I'm just trying to give you basic examples of how to go about creating a song. All right, and kind of just going through this process here. Find your inspiration. Well, we started with today. I just started with the drum beat, and we changed it as we went, as I thought we would. Like oftentimes we stay the same, or oftentimes I rarely keep what I start with. That's what I was trying to say. Don't be afraid to just go in and try something. Now, I'm not trying to say that this is the best song ever. Some of you might hate it. Some of you might love it. And either way, it's fine. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I feel pretty indifferent about it personally. I don't think it's my best work by any means, but it's not bad. It's not terrible. It's not great, but it's not the worst thing I've ever done, believe me. Could it be better? Absolutely. But it could be a lot worse as well. So, and it's very basic. I'm not using a whole lot of elements. If I were to go, and it depends on what kind of song you're trying to do too. You can make this as sparse as you want, or you can really make it complex. You can start layering a lot of things. Often a popular production technique is to layer sounds together to make it thicker and make it bigger or whatever. You do want to be a little bit careful about adding too many individual elements to a song, because otherwise it might you might start getting lost in the sauce, so to speak. You'll have too many parts kind of fighting for dominance or whatever. And so that's something to be aware of. But at the same time, at the end of the day, if it sounds good to you, it's good. If not, change it. Like I said, this is not my favorite thing that I've ever done in my life, but it's not the worst thing I've ever done either. It's kind of mid at best. But it's an idea, right? And you can develop this idea. You can go through and start adding in even more details. Like you can add some risers and some transitional things, tom fills, crashes, various things, but the details, like this is kind of more the outline stage of things still, right? We're still kind of like laying down the foundation and coming up with this template thing. And then ultimately we get into filling in the details. And I'm not going to get into this part of it just yet today, filling in the details. I'm mostly going to stick to find the inspiration, lay down the foundation, and get your template, or get your excuse me, kind of get your template down for what you want to have happen, right? Your A, B, C sections, or however many sections of the song you want to have happen. And then you can start to fool around with that, meaning maybe you want the verse to be a little longer, and so you have your verse do this, and then you can build that verse a little bit more. Maybe you add in some transitions, some fills, maybe even add in some extra layers to fill this out, some ear candy, some various things that you can do to this. And a lot of it probably will depend on what the vocals are doing. For instance, you don't want to have your music be walking too much over your vocals, generally speaking. Although there's a time and a place for that as well. And then you have your chorus, and then maybe you do another verse. And if that were the case, we'd want to figure out a way to make this verse a little bit different than the first verse. Maybe we can take away some elements and then bring them back in. Who knows? Then we have another chorus section here, right? So we have, a verse section here, chorus section, a verse section, a chorus section, and then we can either do like another verse if we wanted to, or we could do an entirely new section, and that would generally be called a bridge. It might be a whole a brand new chord progression of some sort that we put in here, and then after that section we would have a chorus, and then maybe we do two choruses at the end. All right, and then there you go. We have about a 3-minute song, and that's a pretty standard pop song structure right there. We have a little bridge section here. That being said, a lot of songs these days, I've been noticing, especially like TikTok-y songs, tend to be like a minute and a half. So like this would be like your standard TikTok song right now. Would be a verse and a chorus, and then you're done. That's it, right? Twice through the chorus thing here, and then a long chorus, and then that's it. That's all you need. That can be your TikTok song. So don't get too hung up on the structure or trying to like follow formulas to the T, that kind of thing. You can be a little creative. You don't have to necessarily have a 3, 4, 5 minute long song. You can have a 1-2 minute song. There's nothing wrong with that. It seems to be very popular on TikTok. So use your judgment. If maybe you can't think of like enough lyrics to fill out a 4-minute long song, and that's fine. Just do a 30-second song, a minute song, a minute and a half, whatever. Don't get hung up too much on the fine details at first when you're starting to write out your music. The idea is to come up with kind of a rough outline, and then you can go through and you can start tweaking some of this stuff later as you go. And I think what I'll do next week is we'll go over filling in the details, but I'm going to do a song, maybe go over a song that I've already done to give you an idea of how that is accomplished. Because if I were to go in and fill out the details, I don't want to turn this into a 5-hour video, which it could easily be if I really wanted to flesh this out and, hammer it out. Right now, I'm just trying to give you the basic template, basic rough general ballpark ideas of how you can go about writing a song or producing a song or a track or whatever. A lot of it might even include going through and instead of just using this drum track, maybe I like what this drum track is doing, but I think that, it needs an extra oomph in the kick or the snare or something. And so I might actually go through and start adding some layers of kicks and snares and things like that. I might add layers on the bass or some of these other instrumentation to make them pop and make them a little bit more powerful or whatever to get closer to a vibe. So like there's a lot that can go into that filling out the detail portion of this, how to write a song or how to produce a song. I'm just trying to give you the broad strokes right now. And then I think next week what we'll go into is this filling in the details section a little bit more. And I'm going to do that with a song I've already written and produced so that, and I'm, happy with it so that you can get an idea of what those details could include. Right. Anyways, I hope this has all been helpful for you. I hope that you can use this information to go out and create your own masterpieces, your own works of art, your own awesome songs that you're going to be happy with. And I hope you have yourself a wonderful week, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day. Bye.